tech issues, but he's going to join in when he can. But we're back for another edition of the MMA Ratings Podcast. So we have it was a slow week this week, but we still have a lot of things to talk about when it comes to the sport and MMA as a whole. Even though there wasn't a UFC event going on, this was a good opportunity for people to see that there are other things going on in the world of combat sports. So first off, if you want to touch base with us during the show, you can tweet either myself at rgarcia_sports, or you can also tweet Roy Billington at Roy Billington, or you can also follow the hashtag MMA Ratings Podcast to join in on the conversation. So, like I said, Roy is getting his stuff situated, and we're going to jump right into the conversation. The first thing I wanted to talk about, I actually definitely wanted to touch on this issue with Roy. We'll probably come back to it when he is able to log back on. But I guess the publicity behind UFC 178 is off and running. There's a lot of different things going on when it comes to that card. But right now, the main talking point is Dan Cormier and John Jones. It is definitely going to be the biggest fight of the year for the UFC, at least at this point, and it's already getting that type of coverage. But one has to ask, are their actions kind of hurting the sport or hurting the promotion or even hurting their own reputations when it comes to being athletes, professional athletes at this point in time? Of course, everyone's probably already seen the fight that occurred during the press event last week, but it's gotten worse since then. They were recently there's been video that has broken loose about Jones and Cormier getting into a pretty heated argument after an ESPN interview. So this is like after the cameras have already stopped rolling and these two guys were going at it. What they were saying was definitely pretty bad, with Jones threatening to kill Dan if he ever spit in his face, and just things you wouldn't say to even your worst enemy at any point in time. But they were still going at it, and in my opinion, I don't think this is a fake beef as we've seen in the past. Like, for example, we can look at maybe even like the Chael Sonnen, Anderson Silva example, or GSP, Josh Koscheck. This isn't just overhyped to kind of get people to buy this event. These two guys have been going back and forth for the better part of 2 years. Ever since Cormier started making suggestions that he would drop down to 205, he was already pointing towards the fight with John Jones. And now that it's finally, or not even finally here, now that it's at least been made, it looks like these two guys just aren't going to stop at any point in time going forward. So one has to wonder if their bickering, if their actions as a whole are even hurting the perception of the sport. And I think this is a two-part question, because you have to look at it from both sides of the coin. When you look at it from a fan perspective, I don't think it hurt. I can understand why there are some people who are concerned that it may be hurting the sport or used against the sport in the future. I understand where their concern may come from, but this isn't new in professional sports. We've seen it all the time. We see fights always break out in baseball. The sport is never really getting hurt there. It's a part of the game in hockey. It's that excuse is given, so that sport is never really hurt. Scuffles happen every now and then. With football, we've seen plenty of football players being caught up in heinous actions, such as the Aaron Hernandez situation up in New England. And then when you look at basketball, everyone remembers the Malice in the Palace, which was definitely a negative situation for the NBA at the time. But they've even rebounded to where they're having some of the most highest rated television-wise seasons. Now that stars like LeBron and Kevin Durant are in the main limelight. So while this may be damaging kind of the perception of these athletes, I don't think it's overall to say like this is such a black eye for the sport. I mean, heck, we even had Jake Shields and Nick Diaz and who was the other? Jason Mayhem Miller. We had that brawl that occurred on NBC a couple years back, and no one really even talks about that as much of a ridiculous situation that was. So we've seen these situations pop up in MMA before. We've seen them pop up in sports across the whole, and it's never really caused a major black eye to the organization that has lasted a substantial amount of time. Now the UFC has more work to do to kind of avoid those situations because all of the other professional sports have been around a lot longer than them, so it's easier for the UFC's reputation to be kind of damaged because of what is going on with Jordan Jones and Cormier right now. But I still don't think that this is having such a negative reception, I guess, across the sports world. Matt Hughes came out and said that it's bad for the sport. Joe Rogan said that he thinks that this will be used against the MMA as a whole, and I can kind of see that more than saying that, giving this a broad brush and just saying that it's completely bad for the sport. If anything, I think the ESPN footage is much worse than the fight that came out when they were at the press event, because the press event fight can kind of be labeled as a fake situation because it could have been staged. I understand that conversation. But the fact that those two guys were arguing so vehemently when the cameras weren't even rolling, but the film was still being picked up, which is standard because I've known from personal knowledge that ESPN does loop in a lot of different footage, even when the cameras aren't technically rolling. But man, that part, in my opinion, was probably the worst aspect of the whole situation. So you have to look at that's one side of it, is seeing if UFC 178 is technically what's going on with UFC 178, if that's hurting the sport. From a business side, I think this is going to really push this event when it comes to pay-per-view buys. You best believe that the UFC is going to find some type of way to mix this into their promo for the sport. The only issue is it's happening more than a month out, so you have to wonder if things are going to get worse between now and then, or are these two guys going to settle down? I would be surprised if stories come out about maybe UFC executives telling these two guys to calm down between now and fight night. But if this was like fight week, or maybe like the week before, or if this occurred at like maybe the press event of that week, then I think things would be a little bit different. It may even be easier to formulate the idea that that their animosity is worked. But since it's happening almost a month and a half out, it'll be harder to gauge if it has a positive effect on overall buy rates when things are said and done. So that conversation point will probably be brought up at some point in time as we grow closer to UFC 178. Then the last question that I wanted to talk about when it came to this event as a whole, I think we actually touched upon this last month when we decided, or excuse me, when we discussed if UFC 178 is going to overshadow the entire month of August, and it already has. I mean, no one's talking about UFC 177 where there's going to be two titles on the line that night, and we're getting probably a big rematch with Renan Barão and TJ Dillashaw. No one is talking about that fight at all, which kind of sucks because that's a big moment for both of those fighters actually, because you have TJ trying to basically win his title again. Everyone kind of looked at that first fight as maybe it was a fluke. There was a bit of a story coming out that Renan was sick, which didn't really get a lot of traction at the time. So now we're getting that rematch, and you're also getting Demetrius Johnson against Chris Carriazo, which has the potential of being an even bigger upset if Carriazo can get the win against Mighty Mouse. So we have those two fights coming up, and no one is really even talking about that pay-per-view, which is set for August 30th. And then this weekend's card, which even though it's headlined by it's headlined by a fight that shouldn't be a main event, but in this day and age it is. But there still is a lot of value on UFC Fight Night, Bader, and OSP. So that whole event is also getting overlooked as well. In my opinion, that UFC 178 has already overshadowed the entire month of August, and as we get closer to the event, I know the UFC is going to have to kind of work hard to even promote 177, because when you look at that card and compare it to 178, if someone had to pick between either or event, there's no way someone's going to pick 177 over 178. So they may be shooting themselves in the foot when it comes to how well this fight card later on this month gets received by the fight uh, the fight community. So we really are finding ourselves in a situation where one event from September is going to overshadow the entire month of August. And going forward, there were some other interesting pieces of news that came out from the MMA world this week. I think even though it kind of flew under the radar, UFC fighter Mark Boschek retired from the sport. I want to say it was on Wednesday earlier this week, but he was always someone. He was a lightweight fighter I enjoyed watching because he never had a hard time kind of promoting some of his own fights. I remember one of his comments that kind of came back to bite him in the ass is right before he fought Benson Henderson. He made a statement about the WEC guys being brought into the UFC and how he expected everybody to eventually fail their way out of the test in a sense. But not only was he incorrect, because he was placed against Henderson right after he made those statements, Benson smashed him, and then they've basically gone on to run the whole division. I mean, if you look at it, both Strikeforce fighters and WEC fighters have gone out of their way to kind of establish themselves across the board. I mean, you had Henderson; he was a lightweight champion. Anthony Pettis right now, he holds the title. Then one of the top contenders was Josh Thompson, who was a Strikeforce guy. The number one contender at this time is Gilbert Melendez. He's another Strikeforce guy. So then you look at 170, you have Robbie Lawler, who's there as the number one contender. He came from Strikeforce. So there's so many guys who are doing well right now from both the WEC and from Strikeforce and have kind of like shot down Mark's statements. But even still, his retirement should definitely be recognized. He was the first Canadian to actually receive a black belt in Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu, and his grappling was also always interesting to watch whenever he was in the cage. And I was kind of hoping, I thought that there were some interesting fights there for him still left in the sport, but now that he's gone, I guess he's going to focus on teaching in his academy that he has up in, I believe it's in Toronto, but it's bad to see him go. I think he was a great fighter. I think he never lost, back-to-back fights. He always found a way to recover after losing. He won his last fight before retiring, but that was his I would believe that was his first fight since 2012 that he had won. So I think he deserves some recognition walking away from the sport as he did, and wish him the best going forward. Another bit of news that came out in what was widely considered a slow week when it came to MMA is War Machine getting cut from Bellator. That happened, I believe, on Friday. And I don't know why. I don't know, if anyone is surprised at the whole situation that went down because basically War Machine is a character, in my opinion, who we as a sport kind of gave too much attention. We gave that man too much opportunity to behave the way that he did. Hold on 1 second. Hey, Roy, you there?
Yeah, can you hear me?
Yeah, we can hear you now, man. Glad to have you, sir.
Sorry about that, guys. I was just stuck with computer difficulties there.
No problem. So, we can go back and talk about some of the other things that we were just discussing. But first, I was talking about War Machine. Did you see he got cut this past week?
Yeah, it was crazy, man. I read the story, and obviously I read some of the rumors surrounding what went on, and it's just ridiculous. Obviously, War Machine isn't new to controversy, and he seems to be back up to his old tricks again. And I think it's deplorable for him to do that to a woman. But like at the same point, you got to realize that this has happened before with him and Christy Mack, and to me, it's also deplorable for her to go back to him, knowing his way and knowing his tendencies. At the end of the day, he deserves to be locked up. That guy has no place in a sanctioned mixed martial arts bout.
I didn't know that they had like I really don't. I actually unfollowed War Machine. I don't even listen see what he says on Twitter. I didn't know that this has happened before.
There has been some previous before between the pair.
Well, I mean that's definitely unfortunate on both of their parts. Um, I'm glad to see that Bellator acted and they acted quickly. I think that sports organizations really do need to step up when it comes to someone finding themselves on the wrong side of the law. There needs to be like hard and fast rules with how guys are handled. So with him getting cut from the organization, I'm not mad at all. I wish the UFC did something like that as well, but we all know that that they pick and choose how they're going to punish their fighters.
But in the same light, if that was Rampage Jackson or King Mo, do you think that Bellator would cut him as quickly?
Absolutely not. Like and I get that. You know, like we all know that if there's a business side of those types of decisions, but it's unfortunate that they wouldn't do the same thing when it comes to a big name like that, and we know that for a fact.
Yeah, it's really sad to see.
So before we go on, let's go back and talk about some of the things that have been going on this past week. What do you think about what's been going on with UFC 178? Do you think that the beef between John Jones and Daniel Cormier, do you think it's actually real or is this manufactured?
I think it's real. I think the two guys have had beef for years. The World MMA Awards a few years back, they had a run-in. I think it's something that's been building in the background for a long time. Uh, as for the brawl, I think it's so beneficial for the UFC, Daniel Cormier, and John Jones. You know, it's trending worldwide on Twitter and Facebook. This whole debacle is going to make that pay-per-view sell at least 800 buys, in my opinion. I think it's going to be the biggest UFC card in a long, long time.
Now, if that's going to be the biggest card in a long time, I get you. I agree with you on that tip. Did you see the video from their interview with ESPN? I think it was like on Thursday. They were on. I don't think it was SportsCenter. They were on one of their studio shows, and it was a side-by-side interview with Cormier and Jones, and they kept arguing after the interview was actually over. Did you see that?
Yeah, it was pretty interesting. I certainly think that Cormier is coming out in a better light throughout these exchanges. I think John Jones is being shown to be somewhat fake. I understand John Jones is doing what he has to do. You know, the stuff he says on camera is what he needs to say on camera. But by the way he was exposed after that shoot, you know, he does come across kind of fake. You know, he takes the moral high ground a lot on live interviews, and then when the camera's off, he thinks he can he can take digs at Daniel Cormier, which he's been exposed for.
You know, that's actually an interesting point I didn't even think of because what he was saying when everyone thought the interview wasn't being taped, definitely kind of goes against the way he presents himself other times when in front of a camera. So that is definitely a good point to bring up there. Joe Rogan and Matt Hughes actually went on record and said that they think that this is bad for the sport in some way, shape, or form. Joe Rogan will go on to say that he thinks that the detractors from MMA will use what's going on between the two guys against the sport in the future. Do you agree with their stances, or do you think it'll all really blow over?
Yeah, well, I think if this was 2002, 2003, it might actually have an effect, but it's 2014. MMA is legalized in pretty much everywhere. The detractors don't have much traction. The UFC has proven to be popular, and it's proven to last with hardcore fans, and I don't think this is going to dissuade combat fans, which is what the UFC needs at this point. No longer is the UFC fighting for legitimacy. It's already a legitimate sport. It's not going to affect the actual sport as it progresses because the UFC is just going to continually progress, in my opinion.
So is this more of a positive situation, or do you think it's just something that, like, is just MMA kind of evolving into the actual mainstream sport? Because I was pointing out, you know, we've seen situations like this in football, we've seen it in baseball, soccer, hockey, like we've seen it everywhere else. So was it just a matter of time before it got this bad in MMA?
I think it's like Gus Johnson said. You know, sometimes these sort of things happen in MMA. I think it's going to happen in all combat sports. You know, Lennox Lewis, Mike Tyson famously scuffled at a press conference. It just happens, man. When it comes to top level sport, when it's two guys who don't like each other, and they're standing 6 inches away from each other. And John Jones, Daniel Cormier's face, John Jones and Daniel Cormier were literally standing face by face. Something's going to happen. These are both men with skills and who love to fight. And if you put two people who don't like each other and love to fight right next to each other, guess what? Eventually, something's going to go wrong.
Now, what do you think? Like, if Alexander Gustafsson never got hurt, do you think that this event will be getting this much attention already, or will the UFC kind of be more focused on their 3 August events they have coming up, 4 August events? I think they have a pretty solid slate for this month that's kind of been getting overlooked. If Alex never got hurt, do you think that UFC 178 would be getting as much attention as it already is?
No way. I think Alex can't sell a fight as good as Cormier can, and they also like the legitimate beef between Cormier and Jones has been long gone, and I think Cormier is perceived as probably the biggest threat to John Jones. I know they haven't faced each other before, but stylistically speaking, Daniel Cormier should have a wrestling advantage. He's shown that he can handle bigger guys, and it should be interesting when they actually meet.
Yeah, we've definitely touched upon that. Do you think that this is going to have any effect with the way Gustafsson promotes himself after this is over? Because you see him kind of already taking shots at both guys as he's getting healed up and sitting on the sideline. So do you think that he sees what's going on and he'll kind of change up how he presents himself to the public?
Somewhat, perhaps. I think Gustafsson, he's had a shot at the belt. He came very close to winning the belt, but he lost. At the end of the day, I think Cormier deserved a shot over Gustafsson in the first place. I think Gustafsson, eventually he's going to fight for the belt again. We all know this. But Cormier is the fresh blood that John Jones needs. I think Gustafsson is when he comes back, he's probably going to get an immediate title shot. Unless perhaps if Cormier wins, he's probably going to get that knee surgery. And then maybe we could see another fight for Gustafsson. But Gustafsson just has to be patient. His time will come again. And now you should just look from the sidelines and watch how these two guys do.
What do you think about some of his comments about Cormier and Jones acting childish?
Well, as I said, they're two pro athletes and they're feuding. It's hard to be gentlemanly always in the fight game. It's a business that somewhat relies on pettiness sometimes. There's always squabbles in fight sports, and that's the way it's always going to be. And I don't think John Jones and Daniel Cormier have done anything completely wrong per se, and I think that they've done their job more efficiently than most. They've hyped this fight up so much, so I think they've acted professionally, which sounds odd because obviously in most professions the way they've acted is completely wrong, but it's the fight business, and to act professionally in the fight business means to get pay-per-view buys.
So let's continue moving on from there. I had already spoke about Mark Bocek retiring after he left MMA this week. What do you think about him as a fighter? Were you surprised to see him retire? He's still, I don't say he's relatively young, but I still thought he had some value to the UFC. Do you think that it's the right time for him?
I think it could be right for Bocek to leave when he did. He said that he felt that the steroid problem in MMA was ruining things, and if he feels like that and he's kind of looking for excuses, it's probably the best time for him to leave, to start fresh. He was a great fighter. He had some great fights while he was there, but he's not going to be a big loss. His last few performances haven't been his best, and I think he stepped away from the sport at the right time.
Do you think that the steroid point that he brought up, is that really an excuse though, or is just like a serious concern within the sport? Like if you see, we already seen St. Pierre make mention of it now that he's walked away from the sport. Do you think that this is something that more fighters will start doing, or is it just one or two fighters that we see using that as a call for them to step away?
I think the drug problem in sports is a sport-wide thing. It's not just the UFC. I think it's been going. Cycling has notoriously had a drug problem. The NFL, Major League Baseball, they've all had drug problems throughout the years. It's just come to the point that UFC is more to the forefront, and that they are seeing these these things come out now. I think Bocek had a great career, and he's had some great moments in his career, but I think regardless of the steroids or not, he probably will be retiring right about now.
Yeah, see, I get what you're saying. I just think that if we see more guys walking away from the sport, especially if they're walking away earlier, because that they see that there's really a big steroid problem that needs to be addressed, then I think that the situation isn't really going to go away. It's only going to get worse. Yes, steroids are prevalent in other sports like baseball, football, but in this sport where it's mandatory that you have to cause physical harm to your opponent. If you're definitely giving yourself some type of advantage that way, and it's causing other fighters to say, "Okay, I'm done," I think that that's something that will eventually be addressed, especially as if more fighters who are retiring are coming out and making statements as Mark and as GSP have already made.
Yeah, for me though, the fight game, it's interesting. It's different to the other sports, as you said, that these guys are intending to do physical damage, but in MMA, the mental game is as much as the physical game. And I think when guys are taking steroids, it alludes to a mental weakness, a weakness that they need something extra to compete. The guys who take steroids in general are the guys who fold when the times get tough. I know that's a generalization, but it's been shown, the guys who have tested positive have been the guys who've quit when things got bad. So I think, they give you a physical advantage, yes, but mentally they show your weakness. And weakness always gets exposed, be it physical or mental.
I don't know if I agree with that, man, at all, because a lot of times a lot of these guys take PEDs so they can continue training through injuries that would stop normal people or that would stop other athletes. I mean, we've seen plenty of guys fighting on partially torn ACLs or hurting ways that would cause other athletes to step out of their game. Hell, baseball players can sneeze and throw out their back, and then they're gone. They're on the DL for months at a time. When you have and their steroids problem is just as big as that in MMA. So I think it's incorrect in saying that guys are mentally weak if they're using steroids. I think that a lot of them are seeing that they're at a point in the sport where if they want to get that leg up, they have to do what everyone else is doing. I'm not saying everyone else is using steroids, but there are individuals who feel that 80, 90% of their colleagues are. So if they find themselves in that situation, maybe there are those who think, okay, I have to be on the same level playing field to make sure I can provide for my family. So I'm going to go ahead and do what I have to do. And I don't agree that that necessarily makes them automatically weak.
When you look historically on mixed martial arts, the steroid users in general aren't the best fighters of all time. I know there's been rumors through the years about certain big name fighters, but when it comes down to it, the guys who get busted are always mid-level guys. It seems like the guys who make it to the very top usually do it clean. Out of people who have won belts, maybe you've got Josh Barnett, Hoist Gracie when he came back. They all took steroids, but again, those are fighters that have shown when the going gets tough, they go. They're quitters in want for a better word, or they were at a certain point of their career. It seems like the guys who are mentally there, I don't think who can really control the mental aspect of the sport, don't seem to rely on it. They can push through the pain. It's just they have an indomitable spirit, which is different to a lot of the steroid users. He's famous for losing fights. He's been winning the fight. He just mentally checks out. And same with Josh Barnett, Vitor Belfort. They're guys that can clutch defeat out of the jaws of victory.
I think that that's definitely an interesting point that you brought up there. Yeah, you can say that a lot of guys have reached the top of the sport and haven't failed drug tests. That's just what we know of. Again, every guy on a card isn't tested. Only a handful of guys are tested for these events, and unless if guys are being caught in random testing, then we never really know what these fighters are doing outside of their regularly scheduled fight card. So we don't really know who's getting to the top and who's not, and who's doing it cleanly and who's not. We can only really go off of the failed test results, but we really, I mean, how often do we see the the test results from a Bellator card come out or a World Series of Fighting card. We don't often see those come out, so that, like there are many top fighters there too as well. Even within the UFC, we don't really know what these guys are doing. So they may have gotten to the top with some assistance, but we'll probably never find out.
That that could be true. But I guess we can only go on what we see in front of us, and that's just an observation I've seen.
Okay, I can definitely ride with that. Okay, so let's keep it going there. And this weekend we have a UFC fight night card with Ryan Bader fighting Vince St. Preux. What are some of your initial thoughts on that card? Are you going to watch it first and foremost? Because I know a lot of people are kind of down on this event because the main event doesn't feature like two big names. Are you going to watch? Are you going to watch this event, or if not?
I'll probably watch it. I won't watch it live. I'll catch it at some point during the week following. Um, there's not a lot of fights I'm interested in. Off the top of my head, I want to see Cesare da Silva v. Zach Makovsky. I'd like to see Sarah McMahon bounce back. I'm always interested to see Brad Tavares fight. He's usually exciting. I'm actually interested to see Sean Jordan v. Jack May. Jack May looked good in his debut before he inexplicably got bet. He's a training partner of Josh Barnett, and he seemed to have a lot about him. Now, it'll be interesting to see how he does against Sean Jordan. I'm interested in the fight, but the main event for me really doesn't interest me.
Now, I just looked at this card today, and there are like 1, 2, 3, 4, maybe 5 out of 9 fights that are interesting to me, and that's already more than half of the card. That I can say that is more than what I see for some other UFC events that we've seen recently. So I think that this is enough reason for me to watch it. I'm definitely with you. I'm looking forward to seeing Sarah McMahon and Lauren Murphy. I think that that's an important fight if there's going to be that foil that she's supposed to be for Ronda Rousey, even though she's already lost to her once. The Formiga versus Zach Makovsky fight, I think that that's a number one contender fight for Zach Makovsky. If he gets that win, especially if he gets it in a big way, I think he definitely deserves to leapfrog guys like John Lineker and maybe a John Dawson at this point in time if John Dawson's going to be hurt. Makovsky he's looked good since coming over to the UFC and since dropping down to 125. He's kind of flown under the radar. Even with this fight here, he's going to be one of the earlier fights of the night. I think he deserves more attention than maybe Sean Jordan and Jack May. Then you have Ross Pearson and Gray Maynard. I think that's a good lightweight fight there as well too. I think I'm interested to see what Maynard has to offer because some people were kind of claiming towards him being over the hill, and that the last the last Frankie Edgar fight took a lot out of him, and we saw that when we saw Nate Diaz. So I'm wondering what type of Gray Maynard we'll see this weekend, and then we have Brad Tavares and Tim Boetsch as well. I'm high on Brad Tavares. He was doing really well until he lost to Yoel Romero, so it's an opportunity for him to kind of bounce back. Sean Jordan and Jack May, it's a heavyweight fight. It's going to get attention. Ryan Bader and OSP, I don't think either one of these guys deserve to be considered in the light heavyweight title talks right now, so I'm not big on that main event as well too, but I think this card definitely has some value to offer fight fans.
Yeah, I agree. There's definitely some worth in it. I'll watch it. I'll catch the fights. There's some good fights, but in terms of fights that are meaningful for the divisions, there's maybe only one or two. The rest are kind of mid-level people.
Do you have some early predictions?
I think Bader should beat OSP. Jack May will beat Sean Jordan. Tim Boetsch v Brad Tavares, that's interesting. Brad Tavares should do it just because Tim Boetsch hasn't looked good lately. I think Gray Maynard should beat Ross Pearson. Tom Watson should beat Sam Alves. Alan Jobin could well beat Sep Basinski. Zach Makovsky should probably get the win. Robbie Peralta should probably get a win, and Sarah McMahon should get the win.
Yeah, I'm with you on most of those. Yeah, I'm picking. I may actually pick OSP over Ryan Bader at this point in time. I'm not too interested in the Jordan and Jack May fight. I think Brett Tavares is going to get a win. I've never been high on Tim Boetsch at all. At one point in time, MMA Ratings had him, I think, at like the number two positions at middleweight, and me and Eric at the time used to get into arguments about that all the time. I've never been high on him. I think even that win over Otani was a fluke in my opinion. But I think he's going to lose to Brad Tavares. I'm interested in the Ross Pearson Gray Mean fight. Again, that's for reasons why I've already put out there. I think Ross has been looking really good over his last couple bouts, even though he got screwed over by Diego Sanchez. I think he has the ability to take this fight from Gray. He's going to be more active from start to finish. I'm not. I'm going to watch the Tom Watson and Sam Alave fight just because those two guys are going to come here and knock someone out. Again, I think that Bakinski is going to lose as well, as you already pointed out. I'm going to take Zach Mikowski too, and Robbie Foster. And the third man, Lauren Murphy fight. I'm interested in seeing what Lauren Murphy brings into the octagon because, she's the former Invicta champion before she let go of the title to move on to the octagon. So I'm interested in seeing what she brings to Sarah McMahon. Sarah has looked very good until she ran into Ronda Rousey. I think she needs this win. She needs it in a stoppage way to kind of get some momentum behind her. Okay.
Yeah, I think it's going to be very interesting.
Good stuff, good stuff. So let's continue talking about some of the other things that happened in MMA this past weekend. Did you watch World Series of Fighting 12?
I seen none of it. I was working this morning, so I only got to catch some gifs, but that's about it.
Well, since you had an opportunity to kind of look over a little bit, did anything at like the gifts or anything like that kind of catch your attention?
The main event was pretty interesting. It was a decent finish, but the card, it wasn't very exciting for me. It didn't pick me up as a fight event that I really wanted to watch, and I think World Series of Fighting missed a trick by not having a big name on this card, considering the placement of it. Luis Palomino scored a pretty beautiful knockout though, so it'll be interesting to see who they put him up against next.
Yeah, what was interesting to me is there were a lot of people covering that event as opposed to Metamoris 4, which is what we'll talk about later. And I thought that since Metamoris had the bigger names on the card, that they would get more attention. But just some of the outlets that I follow and see online, they definitely were more focused on World Series of Fighting 12, which I thought was again, it didn't have the biggest names, but it turned out to be a solid offering for the promotion. It gave them opportunity to have some of their guys stay active, even though they weren't like the name catchers. And this is what they need because they need as many new stars as they possibly can. So they went about the right way of kind of building up their roster with the event on Saturday.
Yeah, I think Metamoris bit himself in the foot with the non-allowance of media to attend, and just the general pricing of the event put a lot of people off as well.
So you don't think it was worth $30?
No, I really don't think so. I don't think if UFC 178 is going to be $60, I don't think Metamoris is worth $30. And I know that they won't be paying the guys as well as they deserve.
So what did you think about the card as a whole? Like, did you watch it to begin with?
Yeah. I thought it was pretty good. It's not worth $30 though. I think it's for grassroots sports, which jiu-jitsu and grappling is still a very grassroots sport. In the mainstream, nobody talks about jiu-jitsu. I had to scroll for ages to find a website that would allow me to bet on the event, which is unheard of. If it's an MMA event, I can get million odds immediately. This event, I struggle to find anywhere that let me bet. I think, Metamoris really needed to allow more media coverage, provide interviews and media days, so the mainstream media or even just the mixed martial arts media can really big up the fighters and get interest into the sport.
So do you think that that's a change that they'll make going forward? I think that this was a very successful card for them. I want to say there were more submissions than actually no, it was 3-3. There's 3 submissions, three draws, which is a success for their standards. We normally were surprised to get 1 per event. So I thought that this was an actual successful card for them, especially with Josh Barnett winning their heavyweight title, because now that puts them in a position where they may be able to piggyback off of the UFC's promotion of Josh Barnett in any way, shape, or form going forward. Even though he may be more towards the end of his MMA career, he's still a big name that the UFC will keep him around. They'll keep him in main event status. So even any time that he's promoted in that way, Ben Morris can kind of piggyback off of that opportunity.
Yeah, I think that'll happen. I think Metamar's would be wise to sort out an agreement with Fight Pass and the UFC because the UFC famously do blacklist a lot of companies, and that could well be in the cards for them. Just speaking of Josh Barnett, he obviously did amazing last night, getting a submission against Dean Lister, who hadn't been submitted in, I think, 17 years.
Yeah,
But the fact is,
14 or 15.
yeah, it was a heavyweight title. You know, Dean Lister's no heavyweight. I think Josh Barnett's size played a lot into it, but more credit to him for getting the victory.
Yeah, how big is Dean Lister?
He usually fights MMA at middleweight.
That's what I thought. I thought he fights at middleweight. Okay, well, I mean, according the grappling standards, he is a heavyweight technically, but yeah, he was definitely a lot smaller than Josh. But Barnett went in there and did what he had to do from start to finish, and he got the first. Like I said, he's the first guy to tap him out. I've seen everything from 16 to 14 years, so that was something worth watching. I know I got a lot of text after their match was over that people were excited to see kind of what's next. What did you think of Chael Sonnen and Andre Galvao? I was surprised it even took that long. It took about 13 minutes for the submission to come, and I was surprised it took that long.
Yeah, Chael Sonnen brought it. He did what he said he was going to do. He was more aggressive than we've seen a lot of MMA guys when they do grapple. Against Galvao, there's only ever going to be one outcome. Galvao's going to win. I think Chael put up an admirable fight. And perhaps if he's allowed to compete in grappling over the next 2 years, he could have some potential to do well in some tournaments. I think he's definitely got some potential there.
Yeah, I mean, I wouldn't be excited to see him in any more grappling competitions going forward. But I thought he did a lot better than I expected. I was joking with him. I expected him to get his leg ripped off in 7 minutes or less. But he went out there and he did what he needed to do. Do you think he's going to face any repercussions from the INSAT?
No, well, legally, I think they have no route. It's not a sanctioned sport by Nevada Athletic Commission, so I don't believe they can. And if they were to drug test everyone on that card, how many guys would be flagged is what I'd like to ask.
That's very true. You never know. Again, you never know with these situations. So, looking at the rest of the card, what did you think of the secret match?
The secret match was interesting. I was kind of hoping for a bigger named secret match. I was suspecting it was going to be some more MMA guys and big name MMA guys, but it was interesting. It was well done production wise. It could have been better, but Jeff Glover's always fun to watch.
Yeah.
I think moving forward they should do more secret matches, but really get the cream of the crop in, not announce it till the day of and get more hype going, because so many people were hyped for the secret match.
Yeah, definitely. I don't think that this was their first go-to for the secret match, in my opinion. As soon as it was announced, I'm like, I bet you Jeff Glover is doing the favor and stepping in for someone else. I had read somewhere that they tried to get Cron Gracie and Vincent Henderson actually to be the secret match. They both competed in ADCC that was in China last year. So, Vincent has competed in multiple grappling tournaments throughout his career. The UFC has often kind of frowned upon him still doing it, but he still does it because it's part of his craft. So I had read somewhere that was the potential secret matchup that they were trying to get for this card. But Crone is actually working on his MMA debut, which may be later on this year. So that was something worth noting. But I don't think it was a bad matchup. It was definitely two guys who compete in an exciting nature, and I would like to see them going forward. Who are some names that you would like to kind of see in this type of format?
In Metamar's, just speaking, I'd love to see. I really would like to see Crone and Gary Tonin fighting again or competing again. I think that would be amazing. Just from the MMA scape, there's a lot of guys I'd love to see compete. I'd like to see Matt Hughes get into it. I know he's competing at ADCC in a super fight, but I'd like to see him do some Metamar's matches. There's just lots of guys, to be honest. There's even some old school guys. I'd like to see Jeremy Horn do some Metamar's. I would be interested in seeing Jeremy Horn and Dean Lister going against each other, because obviously they've faced twice before in the octagon, so it'd be
Mhm.
interesting to see them again in a grappling match. There's really lots, it's endless. Frank Mir be another one. Um, there's just so many people I'd really like to see compete.
Yeah, I would definitely love to see Frank Mir, maybe the Diaz brothers as well. I think they have a lot of value that they would immediately draw uh, uh, attention to Metamoris if they were brought on. The Gary Tunin, like you mentioned about him, he set the show off great with his submission over Kit Dale. I feel like a lot of people were kind of overlooking Gary in coming into that fight, but he did exactly what I thought he would do, what a lot of other people did as well, when he really pushed the pace as he normally does from the very start, and he got that quick, well, not a quick sub, but he definitely got that sub faster than most people. So I like the way he
Yeah,
called out Crone as well too. I definitely appreciate the fact that he wants that win back, and he even went as far as to say he'll fight him in an MMA fight as well.
yeah. I think Gary shocked a lot of people. I actually bet on Gary. That's what I spent my hours last night trying to find somewhere to accept a bet, and I got really good odds on Gary, so I threw a bit of money down on him and I got the win. Um, I've talked a lot about him going into MMA in the future. I've talked with his coaches about it, and I think that stylistically wise, from a jiu-jitsu guy transitioning to MMA, I think his style is very, very good for MMA. I think if he fought Crone in an MMA fight, I have no doubts in my mind that he would beat Crone.
Hmm. But yeah, I would rather see him fight in Metamoris first. I think that's not first, but I would like to see the fight there because the matchup in China was very close, and Gary took Crohn's back, and there's kind of some controversy of the way time ran out towards the end of the bout. But I would love to see that fight if it would happen either way. I haven't necessarily spoken to Gary about MMA in the future, but his aggressive style does play better into finding submissions, and he doesn't stop. Like he doesn't stop in any way, shape, or form. So I think that aggression would definitely help him be successful in whatever he decides to do going forward.
Just on a money making aspect, I think if they put Crone v Gary in Japan, on one, or even just on a ONE FC show, that would make both of them a lot of money. I think Crone following over in his father's footsteps to Japan, they want to watch him fight in Asia. If Gary goes there and fights him, it's a very marketable fight for them over there. It's an old school Japanese fight, and I think it would be an amazing fight. I think Gary can make a lot of money out of it.
Yeah, for sure. That I mean they actually both could there. So what do you have coming up next for MMA ratings this week?
I'm looking forward to the next few weeks of events. I haven't decided exactly what I'm going to put out yet, but there's so much coming on and about to come on in the world of mixed martial arts that I'm sure I'll find something to write about. How about you?
I'm working on a piece actually on this weekend's card. The fact that I think it deserves some attention, as I pointed out earlier today. I'm looking at just some of the people that they have fighting going forward. I was thinking about doing a Metamoris piece on just some athletes that I would like to see make that crossover appeal as well. There's definitely value there.
Yeah, for sure.
So as always, you can follow myself on Twitter at rgarcia_sports. You can follow Roy as well at Roy Billington, and you can follow MMA Ratings Net to kind of catch up with all of our most recent pieces. Follow us on Instagram as well too, and also visit the site every day MMARatings.net to kind of catch some of our latest stories. And don't forget to always go and rank the fights as they occur. So this is Raphael and Roy, and we will be back to speak with you next week about the world of combat sports. Have a good one, Roy.
Thanks, man. Sorry about the internet. I don't know what happened there.
Nah, no problem, man. I'll see you next week.
Right, cool. Bye.